So October is just about over. It's my favorite month of the year because it ends with my favorite holiday, Halloween. And I like being in sort of a spooky season spirit for the entirety of the month. And one major thing I do to get in that spirit is watch Scooby-Doo. So I thought I'd make this video. It won't really be an analysis of the history of the franchise. You can already find several videos that cover that. So instead it'll basically be my history with the franchise and why I'm still such a big fan of it. I wrote some notes. I don't really have a script. It's just going to be me talking, so I don't know how long it's going to go on for. So I feel like most people know about Scooby-Doo in like a general sense. They probably watched it in some form as kids, and it's pretty simple of a concept: meddling kids and a big dog unmasked monsters. I know some of the stuff I watched as a kid. I'll mention it throughout this video, but the series that aired when I was younger was What's New? Scooby-Doo. I had an episode pack on DVD, like a few episodes from that series that I remember watching a lot. The theme song for that show was really good, and so is a lot of the music in the Scooby-Doo franchise. But yeah, another memory I have is the first live-action Scooby-Doo movie came out in 2002, the same year I was born. So I obviously didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it as a kid. I got it in the library. And I don't know if this memory is even real. I might have made it up. But I remember I had watched the first live-action movie, and I saw that the library also had the sequel, Scooby-Doo 2. So I asked my dad what the 2 meant, and he said something like, oh, they just do the same thing again. And so I said, never mind. Of course, that's not really how sequels work. So I don't know, but I realized like how more about movies and sequels and all that later. And I think similarly, I realized that there's a lot more to the Scooby-Doo franchise later. And the reason, what got me into that realization is back in 2019, my second year of being on my local summer camp staff. It was a little different than our first year. We didn't have a recreational cabin in the staff site, so we had to hang out in the one up in main camp, and because of that we couldn't stay out there as later and be loud and watching movies, because that's kind of a hobby that we had, watch movies every night. So what we decided to do is watch movies that were only fairly short, like less than 90 minutes. It just so happens that most of the Scooby-Doo movies are less than 90 minutes. So, and people had Scooby-Doo movies to bring up to watch. So we watched a lot of those that summer. And yeah, I enjoyed a lot of them. So when I got back from the end of the summer into fall 2019, which is actually the 50th year anniversary of the franchise, because it aired in 1969 originally, I kind of went down a rabbit hole and learned as much as I could about Scooby-Doo. I revisited some of the stuff that I vaguely remembered from childhood. But yeah, I kind of learned all about that. And there's really a lot more to it than you would initially think. So I kind of just started to watch a bunch of Scooby-Doo. Basically every October I try and watch Scooby-Doo, because there's a lot of it, 50 years worth of content. So for the past few years that's what I've been watching each October. I pick some Scooby-Doo watching and cover it. So I kind of started with the original series, and even just that, the way they kind of developed that and came up with the idea is really interesting to me. They took some inspiration from like classic monster movies and like teen sitcoms or whatever. And honestly, the product, I think it came out pretty iconic, because everybody knows what Scooby-Doo is, and they probably think of that original series. But it's not always amazing. Like, there's cool monsters and stuff, but sometimes there's not always a great mystery, and the characters are somewhat simple. But yeah. But throughout the 70s, they kind of experimented. They brought in guest stars for some longer episodes. Eventually, towards the end of the 70s, the third incarnation of the show, the Scooby-Doo show. The original was Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? So the third incarnation was just the Scooby-Doo show. But I actually really like that incarnation a little more because you still got the cool monsters, but there's a better mystery this time. They do a better job of setting up a mystery in that series. And then again, right around the mid-70s, they introduced Scrappy-Doo, who's Scooby's little nephew. He's really annoying. He's not that annoying. He has a really bad reputation, though, because he kind of started off as just this other side character, and then he kind of took over the whole show, and the tone changed. I watched the initial episodes with Scrappy, where it's just, again, a mystery-solving show. There's just another character. But I have like little desire to watch the stuff when the show started to change tone and do like just random antics and stuff. But that's Scrappy. He was in a few movies. I really like Scooby-Doo meets the Boo Brothers. I think it's just basically an extended form of good old classic Scooby-Doo. There's a fun mystery. They have to solve a scavenger hunt. And I think it might be nostalgic because Boo Brothers was a movie that I had seen as a kid probably. But yeah, but the other two movies that Scrappy is in, Ghoul School and Reluctant Werewolf. Yeah, Shaggy turns into a werewolf in one of these movies. It's kind of crazy. Those two are fairly long. I mean, they're not that long, but they're longer than the average Scooby-Doo movie, and they're kind of boring. But yeah. Scrappy's also in the live action movie, and I don't think that movie is very good, but I find every aspect of that so funny. Like, the jokes aren't even that good, but I laugh at them just because, like, I don't even know. And the production behind it, they were gonna make it like an adult thing and like meta and parody, and they kind of had to shift from that to making something actually for kids, but of course there's still traces of the adultness in the actual movie. I just find everything about that first live action movie to be so silly, the way it turned out. As for the sequel, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, that one's like actually kind of good. But I don't know, I don't think of it like as being as silly. Like, it's a better movie, but I don't laugh at it as much, I guess. As for other movies, there's also a Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movie about every year, and most of them are pretty alright. I have a good time with them, laugh at the jokes, have fun thinking about the mystery maybe, enjoying the characters. There's a few standouts, and some are real bad, but most of those movies I don't really feel like I need to talk about that much. What else? What other Scooby-Doo can I talk about? Back in the late 80s, early 90s, they did the whole, you might have heard of it, I guess there was a trend in 80s cartoons, like babyfication, taking one show and taking the characters from it and making them younger. And Scooby-Doo probably has the best example of it, a pup named Scooby-Doo. It's an absolute blast. Like, it's not just a cartoon, but like a cartoon, if you know what I mean. Everything is like so expressive, and the animation is a lot better. And it's the first time the characters kind of had personalities. And the thing I liked about the characters' personalities is, I mean, they have rough outlines of what they gotta be, but other than that, the characterization can be really flexible. Like, you could take the version of Fred from one show and the version of Fred from another show, and they really wouldn't be that similar, for example. And all the characters have kind of had different interpretations over the years. Daphne started off as kind of danger-prone, kind of useless, but now she's like a badass and kind of quirky sometimes. You could say not like other girls. I don't know. That phrase, some people don't like that phrase. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but that's how, I don't know. And then Velma, of course, she's also fairly boring in the original show, but in the newest movie, Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, which I watched and had fun with, they actually finally, and I say finally because this is something that people have been kind of wanting for a while, they finally depicted her as being attracted to other girls. She's a lesbian or bisexual in that. And I know some people might not like that, and I hope not, because it's a really stupid reason to not like something. Don't be homophobic. But I guess the way I think about it is in the original show, all the characters are kind of boring. So people kind of came up with these jokey theories about them. Like Fred and Daphne, when they go off to split up, what if instead of looking for clues, they're doing something else? I'm not going to say what something else is, but you can imagine. Like, that's a funny joke. But the joke for Velma was always, oh, she doesn't look like this pretty girl like Daphne. What if she's gay? And of course, in the 60s, people didn't really know as much about the gay community, but now people do. And I think it's perfectly acceptable to have a character in your cartoon be gay, because representation for that group is good. So I personally consider Velma gay, and I'm glad that they finally have a movie where she's allowed to be that way. But yeah. But again, I guess continuing with my theory of the little joke theories about the characters, of course, people probably have mentioned Shaggy has a lot of stereotypes of a drug user. I don't really see it. I think he's just a chill guy who likes to eat food, has munchies, and gets scared of stuff. It's probably funnier if he doesn't actually do drugs. He just kind of has stereotypes of that. But the thing I do think about Shaggy is there's the meme where he's like all powerful and he uses like 1% of his power. I still think that's funny. So that's my little theory about Shaggy. He has secret power. And Scooby probably has secret power too, because he's a talking dog, and like that's not normal. They act like it's normal, but it's not. There's definitely something up about Scooby. But yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I've talked about most of the Scooby-Doo I want to, but I definitely want to mention one last thing, and that's what I consider the epic 90s trilogy of Scooby-Doo movies. The theme of this is kind of the gang is older now, and they have split up, but now they get back together to continue to solve mysteries, but this time they're looking for real monsters. And they do this by having like classic American monsters from American culture. So the first one, well, the third one, but the first one I'm going to talk about is Alien Invaders. And as you can maybe imagine, they go to the American Southwest, like Roswell, New Mexico or something, and encounter aliens. And that's part of the reason I like that movie, but the other part is Shaggy and Scooby are the main characters, and they meet this hippie girl and her dog, and they kind of have a little romance there. And I really think that romance is cute. I remember I'd seen that movie as a kid, and I don't remember the movie as well. I revisited it, but one thing about that movie that I remember from being a kid, that romance in that movie stuck really well with me. I don't really know why, but I just find that romance really cute for Shaggy and Scooby. But the other two movies in that trilogy, I guess, I do watch a lot more often. I kind of do a Halloween night double feature with them. And so the first one is Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. And I consider that to be the movie that revitalized the franchise. Like, I don't think Scooby-Doo would be around really as much if not for this movie. Because they didn't really have as much Scooby-Doo stuff going on in the 90s. And then they come out with this movie in like 1998, and it just like is so good because it subverts the formula and it introduces the idea of truly horrifying real monsters, and the characterizations are a little more interesting, and the pacing is good, and the animation is good. It's just like a really good movie And I respect so much what it did for the franchise. It's just so good. And I don't know if this is a compliment. There's a really interesting audio quality to the voice acting in these movies. I don't really even know how I can describe it. But like, the voice actors they got, like they have a unique sound to their voice. And you hear that, and it makes the movies maybe timeless, I guess. Again, I have no idea how to describe it, but it's something that I like. And then the last of the 90s trilogy is Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Again with the American culture spookiness. So Zombie Island was like zombies and voodoo in like Louisiana. That's the setting. The setting for this one is the ghost of a witch in New England, which I guess makes sense because that's where the Salem witch trials are. And they go to this town that I think it's called Oak Haven, but it's clearly a stand-in for Salem. And another stand-in they have is this character called Ben Ravencroft. He's voiced by Tim Curry, who I really like. He's in the movie Clue, which I really enjoy. But he's kind of playing a parody of Stephen King, I guess. I don't really know much about Stephen King, but he's a horror author from New England, and that's what this character is. So I think that's kind of funny. And the movie has like a lot of autumn or fall vibes. Like it's the perfect thing to watch around Halloween, in my opinion. So I do that every year. And one last notable thing about the movie is it introduces the Hex Girls, which is like a fictional in-universe band, like a girl rock band group. And they've popped up again in the Scooby-Doo franchise once in a while. And most people, I think that the Hex Girls are pretty cool. It's kind of funny. They're introduced as potential suspects when the gang is trying to solve the mystery. And that's really funny. Whenever I revisit the movie and they're shown as suspects, I kind of laugh because the Hex Girls have popped up later along the line, and they're not baddies. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. They're not villains. So it's just kind of interesting to see their first appearance every time I watch this movie, because I would say they are a part of the franchise as a whole. So, yeah, that's all the notes I had about specific Scooby-Doo stuff I wanted to mention and stuff. So I'll move into the conclusion, I guess. I really hope I was able to convey that there really is a lot more to Scooby-Doo than one might assume. I personally find its history to be quite fascinating, and I think I enjoy a lot of the content in the franchise. It's, in my opinion, the perfect thing to dive into this spooky time of year. And yeah, so the franchise as a whole contains some of my favorite pieces of media, like that 90s trilogy I was talking about. And honestly, as a whole, I think it might be my favorite one single franchise because it just has so much to offer and discover about it. So if you're all interested in learning more about Scooby-Doo, I encourage you to look up it, because there's really a lot of stuff you can learn about the franchise and its history, I think. So yeah, I'm really happy I was able to kind of discover more about the franchise, because it's a lot more to it than you might think, and it's something that I really enjoy.